Hello, everybody. How's it going? My name is Nick, aka Capers, and this week we have a special weekly roundup on behalf of Rad Nauseam. It's still high quality, but this week we're not doing any deck techs. We're going to really focus on the points announcement that happened recently. So we have a nice little points discussion near the end, and we also have two people joining me today, Cull and Nathan. How's it going, guys?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fresh with some new updates.
Yeah,
Here, Nathan's a happy boy this week.
yeah, sure is.
I'm excited, one, to complain about the frog pointing, and two, to bring high quality paper content.
Yes, those two things are never changing. So let's start in Canberra. We weren't able to get. It looks like we weren't able to get Adelaide this week, but in Canberra, our 3-0s at Jolt Games were Breach Bond, Lurus Grixis, and Grixis Reanimator. More Grixis, and then 2-1 4-color lands, Gruul lands, Natural Order Jund, Eldrazi, -1 point Gruul Fling, Grixis, Storm, Team in Midrange, Grixis Death Shadow, 8-point Mono Red, and Breach Bond. Nathan, tell me, how was Jolt Games? You went.
I did go this week, but not the week that we're currently seeing. But I just got back from Canberra, and Jolt Games is an awesome establishment. They have heaps of people playing. They're all fucking cracked. They're all amazing people and great at the game. And yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was good.
Yeah. Shout out Jolt Games. Very, very good. Moving down to another store that we love to shout at is Maze of Fitzroy. This is one of the newer weeklies in Melbourne. We had 8 players. And taking out the 2 wins and 1 draw slot was Blue Red Prowess. I think that was Nick playing Prowess. 2-1 was Jund. And then 1 win, 0 losses, and 2 draws. It's technically positive. It's Golgari lands twice. Cull, is that you and Billy?
That was not me. That was Macy and Billy this
Macy
week.
and Billy.
I was absent.
Yeah, shout out Macy for just jumping into the format and going straight to lands. Love to see it. Any thoughts on this Maze of Fitzroy showing, Nathan?
I'm just happy that there were no Storm players. I guess the previous week where it was 30% of the field had to change.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it looks like a fun little meta developing in Maze. Keeping in Melbourne and moving over to plenty of games, it's not quite the same. Storm taking out the 4-0 and the 3-0 Go and Eat Ramen bracket. And then in the 3-1, we had Orzhov Death and Taxes, 4-color midrange, Atraxa Walks, Dimir Moons, and Esper Tempo. And then Bug Thoracle took out the 2-1 and the 2-2s, Dimir Moons, Grixis, Shops, Grixis, and Mardu. Storm again, guys. What do we think about Storm at plenty of games?
Look, Storm isn't clearly winning everything here because we've got Zoo Breach and Bomberman. Also, Storm decks, if you really think about it, squint hard enough. Not going 7-0 like the usual Tinker Storm deck is.
I'm a big fan of losing every week to this deck.
Maybe you should play a better deck.
It's true.
Yes. The walks forbidden to the 3-1 bracket.
Yeah, Nathan, his reserve list card is not quite good as his opponent's reserve list card, both of which are inaccessible. But yeah, no, it's good. It's been like a what's it called? Like a hyperbolic time chamber having to play against Storm every week. You know, we're learning, we're trying to beat it. I'm getting some games against Storm players. Feels good, but yeah, it looks like
I think it's great. I have developed Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I think genuinely, I think I've become a better player having to face Storm every week. It's helped me really think about my plays and my lines and the way that I should develop my turn and even sideboarding. So yeah, shout out Storm. It's been good, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in our points update later. So let's jump to the other side of Australia, to Perth. Good games, Morley. The 3-0 was Jund. Love it. Nice and clean. And then in the 2-1, we had Eldrazi, Prison Bots, sweet deck, Abzan Depths, Oath and Tal, 5-color Blokes, and Esper Midrange. What do we think about good games, Morley lads?
I want to know what sorry. I want to know what 5-color Blokes is.
Yeah. Is it just like humans?
That's a deck I could get around.
Yeah, it's yeah, someone get that deck list to us so we can show it next week. That's very cool. And yeah, 5-color Blokes sounds like a good time. And the deck seems good too.
sweet too. I think another Oracle, I assume, is a cephalid breakfast setup going on.
Yep, could be.
As another, like a Hermit Druid. It works well in Singleton because you got less 4-ofs to put in your deck for land, so I
Yeah.
assume it's some sort of combo with the breakfast.
I had a Nadu Thoracle list that I brought to CanCon at the start of the year and did awfully with, but it's definitely there's something there. So cool to see that showing up.
You didn't drive to Perth to 1-2?
I wish I could say that I had the fortitude to make that voyage.
Okay, that's all right. Moving on to Sydney, we have good games yet again. Good games Chatswood, 8 players, and taking out the 3-0 was Mono Blue Tron. Then in the 2-1 we had some fun little decks. Boris Moonshine. I haven't seen Boris Moonshine for a little bit. Eldrazi and 8-point Moons. And then in the 1-2 slot, Time Vault, Hardened Scales, let's go, and Rakdos Madness, which I think we've looked at this deck before. It was very cool. Sydney, what do we think?
Look, as someone who refuses to put basics in almost every deck they play, I'm not a fan of Moonshine on any list in my eyesight. But Mono Blue Tron, very cool. Shout out Time Vault once again. What a card.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more people playing Time Vault so that Jack stops registering it.
Yeah, and Boris Moonshine's cool. I think White's gotten some really good support recently, and I think Boris Moonshine now get your Cloud as well. So maybe that deck's real. Maybe we should look into that a bit more. And Blood Moon, people aren't ready for Blood Moon. And 4-color Oath Shift, keep up the good work. That I like all of those words.
What is the shift in Oath Shift?
Shifting Woodland. You're oathing your whole deck, and then you're like shifting woodlanding something in there to win.
Oh, it's creatureless oath. Yeah,
it could be creatureless. So I have no idea. So the oath shift player is gonna have to let us know, but I think it's probably shifting woodland. There's probably a really bad card with shift in it that's on the screen right now that I go and find on Scryfall. Could be that as well.
I know Ronnie plays a creatureless oath up in Canberra, and it's crazy looking pile that I still refuse to figure out in my brain. It could be something like that.
All I know is I'll keep my endurance in the deck. Moving over to Chromatic Games, 11 players in Sydney for Chromatic Games, and the 4-0 was a deck that we haven't seen. We haven't really seen it crop up recently as much as Flash. 4-0. 3-1 we had Mardu and Eldrazi, and then in the 2-2 slot we had Mardu, Nadu. I'm not rapping. That's the decks. Yori and Living End, Bug Midrange, and Grixis. Flash, guys, what a deck!
Yeah, this deck is so sweet. I think it's probably a little overpointed at the moment, but a format where Flash is dominant would probably be pretty awful. But if you're not ready for this deck and you don't have the correct sideboard, you just lose. So
are we speaking from experience?
Yeah, look, I've played against a fair few Flash gamers, and it wasn't until I discovered some sweet sideboard cards like Stone of
Eric.
That kind of got under control, but it's definitely a sweet deck.
Yeah,
but it is good to see like Flash is here at 4-0, and that's the only food deck we've picked up 4-0 in a while. Obviously, with the Samwise Cauldron combo, it's actually the best food deck in the format currently.
It is the best food deck in the format. It could be Flash Nadu. Let's not jump to conclusions too quickly.
I'm a Flash Nadu hater. It's got to be the cat combo.
Nothing worse than your opponent flashing it. Instead of killing you on the spot, they put Nadu into play and then they make you sit there and watch them do the Nadu combo. God, what a fresh hell that would be. But yeah, shout out Flash and shout out Jonah as well for making us have to sideboard against Flash most weeks at POG. So
well, they say that the Flash deck is like the deck you play if you want to play the least amount of Magic, right? So you have to sort of regain that Magic equity of putting Nadu in the deck so that you can resolve the combo and then spend the next 15 minutes doing shenanigans.
Yeah, it's about getting your money worth at locals.
Yeah, that's what locals are for. Jumping over to Woollongong. Speaking of Nadu, Bant Nadu 3-0. The deck is great. We see it a lot down in Melbourne from Mulch, and it wins a lot, so no surprise it's taking out the 3-0 here. Grixis is a list we have looked at previously. It's Grixis splashing white, I believe, which is quite cool. And then obviously Breach Bron and Grixis, so some heavy hitters there in the 2-1 bracket as well. Yeah, Nadu, what do we think, guys? I know we're going to maybe discuss it a little bit in the pointing discussion about cards that were maybe missed this week. But yeah, how do we feel about Nadu and the deck itself?
I think the deck is very, very, very strong. When it's built correctly. I played a lot against Mulch's list, and he's casting green X spells on turn 2 and 3 for Nadu every game. It's terrifying how consistent the deck is at putting the bird into play and a little nomad to go with it.
Yeah, I just always, when I'm playing against this deck, they just always have Nadu in play, and I'm losing. So that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, staying in Wollongong for the Saturday event, 26 players. Looks like we have our round of Swiss in the 3 wins, 2 draw slot. Jund, Golgari lands, let's go. And Jund. And then the other positive results were Jund, Academy, Prison Shops, and Breach Bond, and bots as well, sneaking in there to make our top 8. It looks like our top 8 did filter through to a finals of Jund versus Breach Bond. Breach Bond notably beat Jund in the semis. It might have been a different Jund, but then in the finals, they did in fact lose to Jund. And congratulations to the Jund pilot for taking out the 26-player event. Very good. And Jund is a great deck. What do we think about Jund? We play against it a lot down in Melbourne, so.
I feel bad for this Breach Bond player that had to play through that many strip mines and wastelands to get to the finals, only to lose to it.
Yeah.
What a miserable experience.
Shout out, Bugs was a Golgari lands player. They played Breach Bond for the first time ever in round 1 of the event and won, and then obviously lost to it in the top 8. But a good effort, first time seeing the mess that is Breach Bond.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, the Jund deck is so sweet though. It's so efficient. It's so consistent. It's terrifying. Deadpool and Atraxa. I'm not sure if this deck is playing that Atraxa natural order, but the fact that it can just jam that in there is just, it's such a good deck.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Deadpool, here's a format that doesn't have it. Voltie's Fight Night on MTGO. The 4-0 was Dimir Moons, which is very, very nice to see. And then in the Voltie's Fight Night 51, so we did the back-to-back, 4-0 was Storm. I'd imagine it's Richard. So yeah, Dimir Moons popping up as well. Any thoughts on both of the decks? We talked about Storm a little bit, but Dimir Moons also a deck that got a little bit of a cleave from the pointings, but still a very good deck. We play against it every week. It's very sweet, very tight as well.
Yeah, I believe the image here was Juzza, and it wasn't a 8.1. It was playing the Underground Sea. There might have been a trop for a Death Ride or a carpet or something, but it was 7 point, not 8 point.
Interesting. I guess more ways of turning on days can be good. Maybe not a whole point's worth, but very interesting, I guess. Still good at 7 points. Juzza putting down a 4-0. Now that's going to conclude our weekly roundup this week. It's worth noting now we have a points update discussion that we wanted to kind of break down and give our thoughts about it. I will note that we haven't discussed our thoughts and feelings about the points update with each other ahead of this. We are just going to go through each of these, talk about it, and give our thoughts. So let's start with my favorite pointing, which is Psychic Frog from 1 point to 2 points. And I'm going to give it to the Psychic Frog Enjoyer himself. Nathan, what do you think about the pointing?
I personally am devastated. I can no longer put this card in my deck, but it makes sense. If you look at the 2-point cards, it's clearly like one of the better ones, even here. So it's kind of like a bit of a no-brainer. The card is like, it's a free roll in every deck. It does its job incredibly well, and even if you aren't using like the discard outlet to do broken things, it still becomes like a lethal threat very quickly. So yes, while I am disappointed, it was not unexpected. However, I kind of think if this was a point that they added to make Grixis worse as its like primary intent, don't really think that it's gonna make that much of a difference. Like, they'll just cut a point and play the frog.
Yeah, I think that was the intent. I mean, obviously, you're not saying that you can't put it in your deck because there's 2 points. You're saying you can't put it in your deck because you're a Time Walk Spellseeker player. But I think the intent was hitting Frog, which is very clearly a 2-point card, and Reanimate in the same way that Chris only gets to keep one of them, and they're either going to keep the Frog and cut Reanimate, or they're going to have to cut both for the usual 7 by 1 point cards.
Great, yeah, I agree with everything. Psychic Frog is one of the best. It's a very, very good threat. It's extremely evasive. Even the exiling stuff from your own graveyard is extremely relevant. All of the text on it is good. And yeah, I think I agree with Nathan there. I think it's probably, in my opinion, it is the best 2-point card on that list. I know that Tolarian Academy is a very close contender, but the Frog is just such a free roll in so many decks, and it is insurmountable advantage just keeping it in play for a turn or two. It really gets over the line. It can tangle with some big creatures. It can draw cards and get you out of sticky position. So yeah, really good to see Psychic Frog go up to 2, and Grixis, yeah, they're probably going to continue playing it. What they're going to lose for doing so is Reanimate from 1 point to 2. So Reanimate is also getting hit here. It is also a part of Grixis and, kind of the blue-black Underground Sea decks. They also free roll Reanimate because Troll of Khazad-dûm is such a great card. It's a very good kind of combo to put in a deck that can kind of just win you games. But what do we think, guys? Reanimate 1 to 2, good, bad?
I think this is a great change for the format. We had both Jund and Griffith's mid-range free-rolling Reanimate, and with them having the 1-point Reanimate and the Emperor Bone and the Troll, it kind of feeds on through Reanimator. Which I think was putting a lot of hate on that deck. And you may think that Reanimate going to 2 would hurt Reanimator itself, but I think overall it's a better field for that deck to be in, which I like.
Yeah, I remember just like briefly when I was playing Grixis, and my opponent who was playing Reanimate, would just like turn 1, put their thing in the bin, and then I would reanimate their Valgavoth or their Gristlebrand or whatever, and they would just lose immediately because I just had this 1 mana spell that basically did what their entire deck was trying to do. So like it definitely felt like a free roll, and seeing less of it I'm excited for. I think when you're playing like 5 to 7 1-point cards in your deck, it's pretty hard to justify not including this card at 1 point. So it going to 2 definitely is something that I thought was going to happen a very long time ago.
Yeah, and just on your point as well, even, speaking of like other ways it's turned on is, there's a lot of equity with Thoughtseize, being able to Thoughtseize your opponent's creature and then, pass the turn, untap, and then reanimate their Barrow-Goyf or their big creature is a really strong play pattern that should cost 2 points. And yeah, I think a lot of people now are going to have to kind of look at Reanimate, maybe drop it as a point. I already see some decks that are moving over to Animate Dead, which is a far worse card, costs an extra mana, double the mana. It's an enchantment. You can interact with it a lot easier. You can Abrupt Decay the enchantment. You can Besieger it. So a far worse card is replacing Reanimate in a lot of these decks, which is the intention. And then those all-out Reanimated decks get to now play Reanimate a little bit better. They have a bit more time, even maybe an extra turn to Entomb and Reanimate before the opponent's Reanimate's online. So yeah, great pointing. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think the deck, like the straight Reanimated deck, probably faces a bit less hate in the like traditional sideboard suite, because you're sort of less terrified of your 60% of the field Grixis opponent reanimating your creature, just like for sheer value before you can do anything with it. Like it makes Surveils so much more difficult as a generic mid-range deck when you're like, oh, I need to hit my 3rd land, so I'll put my Barrow-Goyf in the bin, and then your opponent just goes, I'll reanimate and I'll protect it with a Spell Pierce.
Fantastic. Well, great pointing on the Reanimate. Let's jump over to Tinker from 1 point to 2. Cull, you've cast Tinker a lot of times. What are your thoughts on it going to 2?
Look, I actually joined the format after it was already gone to 1, so I've got to see it at 2 originally. But every time I have cast this 1-point card, I don't think I ever lost a game. after casting it, without it being my own fault, obviously, because I'm known to misplay. But I think as Carlos was saying at one point, it does more than what you could even want it to do 10 times over, and it's like still very, very healthy.
I think this point, contrary to what was said in the point discussion video, I think this point was aimed at Storm. But I don't think it really is that meaningful. I think the first point to Storm is like obviously frustrating, or like it weakens it slightly, but I think maybe a second point is needed, but I'm interested to see how this plays out. I think like an extra point on that deck makes it slightly worse, but the second point would make it maybe unplayable. So it's kind of like an interesting balance to walk.
Yeah, it's a very fine line. I think this point specifically has a lot of knock-on effects, but I think it's I like this as a single point. If you are going to pick one point, if you get Black Lotus, it's like a whole different change, I think, to this one. Point Tinker means the deck either has to keep Tinker and lose Urza Saga, because it has to kind of keep Mana Vault if it's playing Tinker. It's the best ritual to go with Tinker. If it loses Tinker, then it changes its whole package up and loses a lot of bad Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star things. Where it loses Mana Vault, loses Grim Monolith. So it's a big choice to be made whether you play it as the Tinker variant, or you cut the Tinker and you go into the more Manual Storm, not Citadel, into play when the game variant. You can do more Doomsday stuff then. So this deck, this point on the deck, I think asks a very big question. It'll be good to see where that actually goes to, and if the deck is as powerful, having to pick between the Tinker variant or the non-Tinker variant.
I want to know what its impact is on food mid-range.
Thank God you asked.
There's been essays in the food Discord on this one.
The food Discord has been popping off. Tinker, obviously, even in food mid-range, was a card that just won the game most of the time. And I was doing fair things. Kappa Cannoneer, that card can be killed. It's a little bit worse than Bolus the Citadel. But yeah, food mid-range, notably losing Caracas or Deathrite Shaman or one of our other points, which isn't great. So a direct point into food mid-range. And I think the committee really needed to address that in their discussion, which they did not. So I'm writing an angry letter. It's almost done. I'll be posting that to the committee head office. But yeah, regarding Storm, I'm really excited to see where Richard and the Storm players take the deck. Whether they just drop Saga or they start, looking at non-Tinker variants. But Richard's played 100 variants of this deck since, and I'm sure he's gonna bring a deck that's just as terrifying and still just kill us every single week.
I'll give you this one for free. I have died almost every time a Bolus's Citadel has been in play. I have never died to a Storm player beating me to death with robots.
Robots, yes, that's true.
They have I don't even know if they've ever made one.
I'm going to give you a bit of an inside hint here. Yeah,
and
it's
then they
the robots are why that card's good, man.
they get a Black Lotus, and then they tinker it into a bloody Bolus's Citadel, and I'm dead.
Fantastic. Well, that's our points changes. So moving on to the watch list, we had powerful one drops moved. I guess they're now being watched thanks to Mental Missteps pointing, with Ragavan being that kind of key card to kind of look at as a 1 point card from 1 to 2. What are you guys' thoughts on one drops? Are you dying to them often? Is it worth looking at all of them?
I think one drops are good. They're usually good to spend 1 mana on them. I think Ragavan is in many decks, many high percentage of decks, and that's probably too many for a 1 point card. I think it was the 10th most played card at Canberra 5. Not 10 most pointed played card, 10 most played card in general. I don't like the idea of that. But I think there's a big difference between a lot of the one drops on the scale. Ragavan's probably the most heinous of them all.
I think it's pretty obvious that one drops are going to get better with less mental missteps in the format, but I don't think that that's an argument for depointing mental misstep. I think that I would like to see more cards with points on them and a larger points list in general. But that's a philosophical discussion for like how you wanted to balance the format. I don't think that we should be rushing to D-point one drops, especially not with how efficient decks like Grixis can be with those cards. If you
Yeah, I
just
think
put a
this
one
is-
drop in a play and then protect it, it's very, very strong strategy.
I think this is all the follow-up stuff that we knew was going to happen when you point something like mental misstep. There was always going to be a large amount of time afterwards where you have to work out, is this 1 point too good now, or is this 1 point only good because missteps at 1, or like finding out when to go after that. And I think like Ragavan might be looking really good right now, especially with misstep at 1 point, but I don't think that's any reason to touch misstep. I think leaving misstep where it is a great call, and just kind of working out how you work around that is important.
Yeah. Shout out to the committee for this point update has been great, but just keeping the ear on the ground and really keeping us like invested and communicating with us as well with stuff like this. Yeah, really good and a great points update overall. But I guess now we can move over to what was, I guess, quote unquote.
Wait.
don't wanna move over
No,
you got more to talk about?
No, I want to talk about mental misstep potentially
all right.
going back to 0 because
All right.
Vi was saying that she'd like to see it go back to 0, or at least heavily implying that. I think like free interaction in Eternal formats, obviously you need it to some level because there are decks that are going to be doing like busted stuff very quickly, and you need to be able to interact with it while also progressing your game plan, etc. But the ubiquity of mental misstep, the literal no brain power required deck building decision of including that card in your deck is not something that I personally think should be in the format. Like, I'm gonna sound hyperbolic here, but it goes in every deck. Like, there's no objectively correct decision that you can make that includes not having that card in your deck. So, yeah, I think mental misstep at 1 is great. And if you're going to be one of these Grixis players that want to protect your 0 point Nethergoyf with a 0 point mental misstep, like, yeah, I guess powerful spells being cast, like, that's not the format that I personally want to play in. So I'm very happy that they've did this point and they have kept it. And I want them as that, like, yeah, shout out to the committee. They're not knee jerking back to the propaganda. And I'm putting my tinfoil hat on. Yeah, they're not just gonna cave and put it back because of a few notable names are complaining about it. I'm very excited to see this stay in the format.
Yeah, I think free interaction is obviously broken, and if misstep was in a lot less decks, like if it was correct to play in only 50% of decks in some magical Christmas world, or less than 50% of decks, it might be a lot nicer to have it at 0. But when it's in 80 plus, 90 plus % of decks, and it's your deck is 59 cards plus misstep plus sideboard, it's not ideal in my personal view either.
Or 61 cards if you're a lands player, but yes, I do agree. Any other notes before we move on?
No, we can get back to talking about why Deadpool wasn't on the watch list or pointed.
All right. Yeah, we'll move over now to what wasn't pointed. We've got a few cards on the list, but yes, we'll start with Deadpool trading card. Talk to me.
I have not once traded this card.
And that'll do it.
All right. Tezzeret. I'm just...
No, this card's like fucked up. Just straight up. Like, obviously, my personal experience is playing a mid-range deck that has a lot of enter the battlefield effects and also plays like pretty tight margins some games, that a card like Deadpool resolving makes my deck feel very underpowered, and I'm casting Time Walk. So yeah, it's a bit of a bias here, but this card in the mid-range game is insane. If your worst case for this card is that it is bad on an empty board state, you are winning that mid-range game already. So it doesn't matter. And holding up a Deadpool for when they do top deck a creature, you just put them in the dirt, get there into the battlefield effect, take the initiative back, Eternal Witness. Even if they play just like a Deathrite Shaman or something, you have put a very real clock on them and also put a powerful creature onto the battlefield. If they do elect to sacrifice their creature, then you're going to draw a card out of the deal and continue to punch them to death with a very well statted creature. So
Yeah, I think obviously it's going to be good into a deck like Walks because it's an ETB deck. Like, any clone's going to be good into that. But Deadpool does a lot more than just clone your creature. I've played a lot of Rakdos decks recently, and it's been the main deck. It's been good. It's the house. But I've played the most lands out of any of my decks over the past few months. I play one red card in my main, being Ren and 6, 2 red sources that are fetchable. And my sideboard is Red Blast, and Deadpool as the red cards. Deadpool is there simply to break the mirror. If you break the mirror or you break a mid-range matchup, Deadpool will probably just win it.
Yeah. And I think, one of the discussions about Deadpool not getting a point is that, on an empty board, there's ways you can play around it as well. And things like, the mana value. I think that rating a card by its floor is, it doesn't really feel great when cards like a Binoculus, that's also 1 point, has a terrible flaw of being completely uncastable. Even Murktide is a really good 1 point card that's essentially uncastable if you have no graveyard. And this is the flaw of the card, right? So I think when we look at Deadpool, we should maybe look at not just the flaw and be like, well, it's uncastable. Even as a 5/3 body that bolts you on your upkeep, you're still winning that race. You still have 2 more power than you're taking every turn. So I think it's a really good card. I'm going to have further discussions about it, which is great. I love being invested in a format where I can talk about cards like this, and we can definitely discuss it. But yeah, I think Deadpool is definitely, in my opinion, it's a 1 point card. I play against it a lot, and I play a mid-range deck, so of course it's going to be good against me. But yeah, any other thoughts?
I think we're currently in a mid-range format and a mid-range meta. Crixus is good, Junder's good, Walks is good. These are all mid-range decks. That's all they do is mid-range with a little bit of combo aspect. And Deadpool is the best card in the mid-range.
Fantastic. Let's move on to another card that has recently joined the format, and I'm going to tie Tezzeret Krill Captain in with, I guess we are going to talk about Storm a little bit, and who have just picked up Tezzeret. So Tezzeret and Black Lotus were both discussed as potential points to Storm. We'll talk about both. But yeah, what do you guys think about Tezzeret? Cull, you've played a lot of it, or you played a bit of it now that you're a bit of a Time Vault gamer. How's the card? Is it good? Is it worthy of a point?
I think in a vacuum, it's probably a card that is worth a point. It does a spell seeker kind of thing. It does a key kind of thing. It does a lot of different things. I don't think the current environment warrants it for a point. I think any deck that was doing good before Tezzeret, like Storm or like bots, they add Tezzeret to their deck. If you go and point it, they just remove it, and they're as strong as they were before. And I think decks like Time Vault, which obviously it's a great card in Time Vault, I don't think Time Vault's broken the doors wide open and it's terrorizing the format just because of Tezzeret printing. I don't think it needs a point right now. I can understand why you would want it pointed. Like if you look at the card in a vacuum by itself, yeah, it's pretty obscenely good. But I don't think that's how we point cards.
Yeah, I agree largely with what you're saying. Like, I don't necessarily think that there are decks anymore at the moment that are breaking the meta, that are doing something that hasn't really been done before with this card. But when you compare it to similar effects, like similar tutors, it is a colorless, in my opinion, yeah, it's a colorless Spellseeker equivalent that you can cast on turn 1 or 2 pretty consistently in the decks that are looking to cast colorless 3-drops. And it immediately gets you extra value. And because you've cast it so early, it's then going to stay, like it'll stay on the board for a few turns. And even in like a really stalled out game for whatever reason, like it's like a win condition too. Like it does a few things. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this get pointed in the near future. I personally think that it should have been pointed already, but it's not really because there are decks that are crushing it. It's because this card is just the same as other similar effects, and they're pointed, so this should likely be as well.
Yeah. What do we think about Black Lotus as well in that kind of like stormy, storm type dot deck? Do we think Black Lotus dodging a point was worth it? Was Tinker a better hit than Black Lotus?
I think Tinker was a better hit. I think it leads to more questions about the deck, and it pushes the deck in a certain direction. And I prefer to see that first than just hit Black Lotus straight up to the 5 points, even though it probably is a 5-point card. Like Tezzeret in a vacuum, you can definitely put this card up a point. I don't think it's as interesting to point the Lotus now than it was to point Tink. I think Tink is a smarter point on the deck.
I'm genuinely surprised that Black Lotus has remained at 0 points for this long. It's a pretty good card, and the fact that
Which Black Lotus you talking about at 0?
Sorry. I thought we were talking about Black Lotus with upside. No. But yeah, Black Lotus getting an extra point wasn't necessarily the outcome that I wanted for Storm, and I'm glad they haven't, because like you're saying, it's a bit more interesting when you point the sort of periphery cards. Deck building decisions get a bit more interesting. But yeah, the knock-on effect for other decks that maybe were viable now that aren't viable, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see. But point LED.
Point LED. That is also one that did get missed. Fantastic. Well, we'll move on to one now. Billy isn't here, but if he was, I would let him introduce this section. We are going to talk about Atraxa / Natural Order, and I know that, Cull, you're a bit of a believer in this going up somewhere a point here. So do you want to give us your reasons, and Nathan and I will disagree with you?
Yeah, I know you both love casting your 4-mana sorcery and putting... Oh, who's it going to... It's Atraxa. It's Atraxa into play, and the card's boring. I think Atraxa is the best creature to be natural ordering into. It's also the best creature to be reanimating, and it's also the best creature to be oathing into, I believe. Like, it's very boring and like very repetitive pattern when your Jund opponent or your Walks opponent just goes Dork, land, natural order, here's my Atraxa, surprise, surprise. Or I tagged onto this is probably the whole argument for Worldly Tutor and Metamorphosis Fanatic. I think those four as a package it's really strong. I think it's also just really boring and repetitive to see the same 4 cards over and over again.
I think the natural order for only Atraxa is maybe due to it not, I guess, the deck building aspect from like a creativity point of view, because like I think there are other things you could natural order into that are kind of interesting, like the Bright Glass Gearhulk, or I had an opponent natural order into a Ice Till and recur 2 strip mines from their bin and kill me that way, which is pretty cool. So I think it's a bit underexplored because of the whole like Atraxa thing being just the default kind of pick. But I don't necessarily think that it's the correct pick for every deck. And there is some deck building requirements for putting a card like Atraxa in your deck. The amount of times that it's essentially just a mulligan. is not 0 when you have that card in your opening hand. The amount of times where you do draw a natural order and don't have the creature to put away, or your game plan was reliant on your Birds of Paradise living for the first 3 turns, it's definitely not like a 0 cost.
Yeah, and I think playing green creatures, playing dorks, doing all of that stuff that, the deck building restriction that exists around natural order, it is a genuine restriction. You are drawing those dorks later in the game when you need good cards. That Birds of Paradise, that Arbor Elf, they're gonna be in your deck when you're trying to draw a card that's gonna win you the game. And yeah, that's a cost. I agree with the Ice Till Explorer as well. I've been natural order. That's been my second natural order target now, and it is extremely interesting. So I guess Atraxa at a point, I'd probably still play the natural order for Ice Till and maybe for Bright Glasses as a secondary target. But I am happy to see that green decks aren't just getting catching another point here. They are getting a point with your animate. So it's good to see that these green decks playing dorks, they have a way of winning the game, even if it is a little bit boring. But there's other boring stuff in the format that people call boring. At least a lot of the decks that are putting natural order and Atraxa into play, they don't do it as consistently as decks that have card selection, which maybe makes it a bit less boring. I love resolving the trigger, so maybe I'm a bit biased.
I think natural order, like it isn't the card I would point. I think getting your Ice Till or your Torsten off it is far more interesting than Atraxa. I think Atraxa is really boring and repetitive to me. But I think the whole putting dorks into your deck is a downside argument. It's there, but like Walks and Jund and Junk, they're all playing the dorks already. Like it wasn't like you went and chopped up your deck just to fit these dorks in. They were in the deck. They're already there.
Is
You
this
just put the green 4-mana spell and the Atraxa in there with Fnatic World Tutor.
Are these decks like, breaking the format now enough to justify they must be pointed? You mentioned like Junk, Jund, Reanimator, Oath. Are these decks good enough to be like, well, this needs to be pointed? Because you said, like Tezzeret, for example, in a vacuum is essentially a point, but where the format is right now, it probably doesn't need a point. So is that not the same for Atraxa currently? Or maybe we're a bit biased because we play against extremely good Jund players every single week, but at Canberra, we didn't really see Jund break into the top 8 at all. Is that a consideration?
I think the 4 or 5 best decks in the format, I think Walks and Jund are both in those decks. Grixis and Storm probably also in the top 5. I think Demir Moon's probably rounds out that
And
top
then
5
Food,
in my
of
opinion.
course.
Of course, Food's above in the tier 0 category. By Demir, Storm and Grixis all cop some points this update. I think I'd be putting Jund and Walks also in that top 5, and it wouldn't be unreasonable to put a point on those. Obviously, Reanimator and Oath do cop Splash there as well, but I mean, Reanimator would also cop a point from the Frog Reanimate +1, and Bots cops 1 from the +1 of Tinker and stuff like that. So I don't think it's unreasonable to point Atraxa there.
Great. Any other cards that you guys wanted to discuss? There are a couple of, just off the top of my head, is like maybe Nadu going up, Uro going down, cards like that. Any last thoughts about what cards should go up or down? Is there any based takes?
I would love to see Uro. Yeah, 100%. I want to see Uro at 1.
I'd like to see Uro and Gush costing 3 points together, not 4. I think those two in Mythic Sanctuary just make a nice, well-oiled machine. But I'm not sure how healthy it is to put Uro into every deck. That is, trying to do some mid-range stuff. It opens games wide open for the longer game, and it probably stuffs aggro a fair bit.
I'd be interested to see Ancestral Recall down a point. Yeah. I think I have not seen a single person cast that spell since I've played the format. I don't even think I've heard one person putting it in their deck at CanCon or something. But since then, I don't think. Yeah, since then, I don't think I've seen it. So obviously, there's something wrong there. So I would like to see that go down a point. I would be interested to see some point shifts, like maybe Spellseeker going to 0, and if you think Time Walker is the best thing to be doing with a Spellseeker, maybe that goes to 6. just to sort of see cards like Spellseeker going into other decks.
Spellseeker
but I mean,
is already played in Flash, which makes that a little bit more interesting.
yeah, because Flash isn't
Not that you want to see more
dominating.
Flash.
Well, I mean, Flash isn't dominating, so maybe you could see more Flash.
I think
But yeah,
Flash being played is generally not a happy thing if it's like one of the correct things to do is to play Flash. It does lead to a pretty miserable environment if you've got X amount of players at your weeklies or at your big event playing Flash. With lots of non-games, I feel.
yeah,
Which it might hurt new players getting into the format. You rock up with your 8-point Boros and your opponent goes turn 2 Flash, turn 2 Flash. Alright, well, guess I'm going home early.
I think 4th Earlingus could probably cop a point too. It's not currently in vogue, but I think that card is very strong. I think it can just end the game almost out of nowhere, and I think if we ever get to a meta that's, I guess that card is very good in, or even just like, I think it's just already good in the meta, but like if it ever gets like even that slightly bit better, it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, my lukewarm take is just put a point on some sort of breach pile, gamble back for lands. I think that's just what every land pilot dreams of is putting gamble in your deck at 0 points. Because at one point it's a rough cost in a land's point spread, but at 0 it makes the one
Yeah,
for
actually,
a lot higher, and it makes it just a fun.
I agree. Gamble could go to 0, and in the breach pile we could point fast bond.
All right, buddy.
Got him.
Walks to 7. Here we go.
I think Time Walk should be an 8-point card, in my opinion, because then you never get it. But yeah, I think also like sometimes I look at Enlightened Tutor, like I know why it's on there, but I'd like to see some white-based artifact decks popping up that could be interesting, or even white-based enchantment decks.
So the guy who wants to point tether it for Time Vault also wants to give it Enlightened
But,
Tutor for free.
Time Vault is a deck that, when Tezzeret got printed, we got to see it pop up more and more, and now obviously Tinker means it copped a bit of splash damage, so giving it an Enlightened Tutor could be cool, but I do understand that, yeah, like playing a key, untapping, getting Time Vault, winning the game is a pretty bad play pattern. So I understand why it's there. I just think it could be interesting, World of Tutor's free. I don't see a lot of Enlightened Tutor. It could be cool.
I think Imperial Seal going down a point probably isn't unreasonable. It's probably no reason to do it in the first place, because I don't know who wants to be playing Imperial Seal in the first place. But at 2 points is a lot of points for it. I think my personal tutor I'd be wanting to see depointed for no reason other than I think it's really cool, and I like Infernal Tutor would be Demonic Council. But I know that poses lots of problems with Lurus Breaches and Storms and stuff like that, but I think that card's so sweet. I'd love to play it again. It felt great in lands.
In the points update video, Voltie talks about the large amount of cards that could see like a depointing if that was the direction you wanted to take the format. So yeah, there's it'd be pretty format warping, but yeah, you could potentially take a whole bunch of cards off / down a point, and I think they're looking at doing that later, but not right now prior to the big event. But I think prior to the big event is potentially the best time to do it. But anyway,
I'm also just remembering that True Name is pointed. I haven't seen that card since before CanCon. I don't know this card is still on the list.
I saw it in
it's a house and 8-point. It's a house and 8-point Merfolk.
Yep, that's for sure.
Oh, true. Can't let that take over the format.
How would we feel?
Deadpool beats it though.
Actually, true. Okay, we didn't think about that when we printed Deadpool. How would we think about this is a crazy idea? I'm sure it's been questioned before. If the committee just took the 1-point list and went, these are free. The 2-point lists are now 1 point. 3-point lists are now 2 points, and everything moves down 1. Obviously, it would be a insanely radical change. But what do you think? How would that, would you think it would be positive, negative? I think it would be a nightmare, but could be cool.
Have you ever lived in a combo hellscape before? Because if you were worried about Storm before, I think you're
Force of Will,
worrying about
baby,
it
it's
twice as
free.
much.
Force of Will costs 0 mana. Mana drain, 0 points.
Right, they only gain like 5 tutors and bid and draw spells.
They
so it's
do.
all right.
They do get a lot of tutors.
I think Mystical going to 0, Council going to 0, Gamble going to 0, Top going to 0. You got Wishclaw to 0. You got everything going to 0. Taint Impact to 0.
I hate this thought experiment.
All right, we're moving on.
This is a bad question, dude.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast episode. It feels like this has been great. Now, for more info on weekly and fortnightly events, that's right, we're still in the roundup. If you forgot, you can look at the videos on our channel. We have Where Can I Play Highlander on our YouTube channel. We also have a bunch of other videos. We have, obviously, as you guys know, we have live paper content that we love. We even have CEDH content on our channel now that we're going to start posting from the Rad Nauseam 7 tournament, which is exciting if you like high power Magic the Gathering, even multiplayer. So very, very fun and some very long, interesting combo-ish games. Big shout out to Zach, Billy, Alex, Lockie, Lee, Steven, and Ariel for providing us with the results for last week's weeklies. And remember to give us a like and subscribe. It really does help us a lot. We are approaching 200, which is amazing, actually. So we do appreciate all the support, and we're excited to hit that big 2.0. I don't know if you guys want to say something at the end to fill it out. Maybe make like a noise.
Shout out Cull's dad for subscribing.
Really?
No, not yet.
Dude, get him on there. I sent our YouTube channel into my family group chat. I didn't do that.
Alright, I'll get the whole payment.
Yeah, I mean that's more. If everyone gets their family to subscribe,
Cull got his tennis coach on.
I am the coach. That's why I suck.